What's up again, my friends? How's it going today? Well, let me just cover this while I'm still thinking about it and it's fresh in my mind. As I made a video probably once a year about religious people coming to my door. I was going to say Mormons, but then I thought, well, Jehovah's Witnesses, it's usually one of the two. Yesterday I got a knock at the door. I answered it. It was this sweet girl, maybe 20, 18, I don't know how old she was. And she's just all smiles. And she had her little tote bag, and I said, how you doing? She's like, great, how are you? And went on telling me about how she's going to college, and she's trying to raise money for her tuition, how she wants to be a pediatrician, and she's selling books in order to raise money. Now, I've seen these people before, and I should have been aware that this was a part of the church. But the reason I'm bringing it up now is how fascinated I was by the fact that she completely avoided talking about God in every way, shape, and form. And in fact, none of the books said anything about religion. They were almost hiding their intention. And so my question is, what happened with Jehovah's Witnesses to where they went from proselytizing and saying straight up, what God do you believe in, to trying to sneak it in through getting you to fund their Christian colleges, or I guess Jehovah's colleges. I feel bad because I don't feel like these younger people who are out there doing this even really understand their own beliefs. And so she asked me what I'm interested in and what I do. She asked me, what do you do? I said, well, I'm a philosopher. She didn't know what to say. She's like, you are? I was like, well, I said, usually when people ask you what they do, people tell you what they do for work. And I said, work is just money. That's not what I do. I said, I'm a thinker. I like to share. I like to read. I like to write. I'm like to be educated. And so we got in this conversation. She's like, do you like history? And I said, oh yeah, absolutely. So she's like, oh, well, this book is just perfect for you. And they're these kind of thin books, maybe, 80 pages, larger books. And I flipped through it and boom, God, saw Satan in there a few times. And I was like, so is this a religious book? That's when I realized, and she's like, oh, no, it's just about history. It's just that, there's some things about the Bible and when it was created. And I flipped to another page, there's a whole timeline and it talks about prophecies. And I was like, this looks pretty religious to me. So actually, I'm just not interested. Thanks anyway. I was like, because it's history through whose terms and whose eyes. And I started explaining how history was flawed. She went on telling me that this next book might be for me. And she went through 3 different books saying, oh, well, this one's great. This one's great. And finally she saw the kids and, she's like, oh, well, you have kids. How about this one? It's a book to read to your kids. And I opened it up. It's just all this shit about God and Matthew. And I was like, look, I respect your religion, but I'm really not interested in promoting this to my kids. I said, I have studied comparative religion. I'm interested. She's like, oh, really? Well, what religions? And I went on and listed it. And I remember during the conversation, I said, Buddhism. And she goes, oh, wow. I haven't heard much about that. What's that like? And my first thought was, here's a person who's been suckered into believing what somebody else told them was true, but that hasn't even looked into the other options. And I explained to her, I was like, first off, you should know that Buddhism is not a religion per se. She's like, oh, and Buddha is not a god that anyone prays to. She's like, really? It's like, no, Buddha is what we can all become. I said, you see, the original character was Siddhartha, and he saw the corruption and problems in the world, and he became the Buddha through his enlightenment. And I said, this is exactly how I feel about the story of Jesus. That Jesus never said, follow me. Jesus never said, worship me. He said, walk in my footsteps, do what I do, and you can be as great as I am. But people can't handle that because that takes more effort. In other words, to be a great person takes a lot more effort than just to pray to one. And I'm sorry if that sounds a little bit condescending, but it is. Because I've met a lot of really shitty Christians, but I've met a lot of great ones. And that goes for every religion. But anyhow, back to the point here. This girl was persistent, and she kept asking. She's like, well, these books are usually $60, but we ask for, she said, we take it on donation basis. She said, the suggested price is $60, but we take $30 to $60. And I looked at this little pamphlet that was like 50 pages, and I was like, really? $60 for this, And I was like, well, thank you, I appreciate it. And I was kind to her the whole time. And she's just like, are you sure? Are you sure? And it's like, how fucking many times do I have to say it? it was after that event where I put the no religion sign on my door as well, because I actually enjoy talking to these people. I enjoy talking to people about religion and about life, but they're not willing to listen to me. The minute I would start talking about anything, she would get uncomfortable and kind of hee giddy and laugh, and she would like, right in the middle of me telling her something, she kind of turns to the kid and like starts talking to the kid. I've met these type of people so many times in my life. When they're uncomfortable and caught off guard and they're confronted, they turn away from you and they talk to someone else. So many people I've seen do this. And to me it shows kind of an insecurity in what we think we know. And so anyway, them coming to my door, I have no problem talking about God as long as they're willing to listen to my interpretation of God. And my only goal in even talking to them is hoping that they'll walk away with just a stone in their shoe, as they say. A stone in their shoe to remind them of that one guy I talked to. You know, God, he had a good point to make. And I'm not saying my points are great. I'm just saying a lot of people won't take the time to say, but what about this? When I told her that heaven sounds like a nightmare and I'd rather spend the time in hell with my friends, she's like, kind of like, whoa. And I was like, well, think about it. Would you want to spend time for eternity with happiness? Because without suffering, there can be no greatness and no happiness. And this is what I was in the process of explaining when she just turned away and started talking to, the kid. And so anyhow, I realized that she was kind of out of her element, like most people that show up at my door are. And she's like, well, that's okay. Can I at least give you this? Then she took the books back and she goes, can I give you this? And I was like, sure. And just a little happiness pamphlet. She's like, oh, we accept any donation amount for that. And I just kind of looked and smiled. I was like, I might have $5. She's like, oh, that would be better than, that'd be great. Better than nothing. So I went to my wallet, had a $5 bill in there, came back, gave her the $5, took my shitty little pamphlet. She said thank you, and she was pretty much gone at that point. I mean, that was it. She's done. She got as much money as she could. Took the book, threw it in the corner of the room, and there it is, just a waste of my $5 to give to somebody who was proselytizing to me, more or less. And I thought, she got me. I felt for her. I wanted to help her out in some way, but it had nothing to do with, what she was selling or promoting. More or less, it's like paying somebody to get out of my hair. But it's called Happiness for Life. And it wasn't until afterwards I looked down, it's from Adventist Health. And I have heard that, but I wasn't aware that Adventists were like the Seventh-day Adventists or the whatever, People have so many corny, weird little sects and religions and branches that, So anyway, about the book, there it is. About a week before that, somebody came and gave me this one. It's 2019. Love Never Fails, the Convention of Jehovah's Witnesses. But I changed all the Jehovah's to Jerry Garcia and made it kind of a Grateful Dead thing. It's hilarious, just fun. But all of these things basically tell you the same thing. Where do you find true love in a hate-filled world? How can you overcome your fears? How can you make more money? And it's just sad that so many people are so desperate. But what I'd like to say first off is I'm not one of those guys out there trying to stop religion. I believe 84% of the people identify with some religion in this world. I am the minority in this case. I understand that. 78% of people in the U.S. identify as Christian. I'm definitely the minority there. And the one thing that I've tried to convey to people when I talk to them is not that I'm trying to dismiss what they believe or telling them they shouldn't believe it. All I'm asking is one question. Why can't you accept that my God is just as valid for me as your God is for you? I'm really waiting to hear an answer to that question from any of these people that knock on my door. Because every one of them believes that their book is correct, and it's the only way. And so it's the one main point that I try to make sure that they hear from me before they walk away. Say that, the only thing that's sad is that I completely accept you for who you are and what you believe. But I'm not at your door telling you not to believe. You're at my door telling me I should believe. So come on in, let's talk about it. A couple months ago, I had a couple Mormon kids in here. Couldn't have been older than 18, and they were on their mission, and had them in the living room here talking for like an hour, and they were just, by the end, they just had to go. They were itching to leave, but I respect them. You know, I respect Mormons. They were open-minded. They've always been courteous and respectful and curious and interested. But the religion as a whole is just still something I scoff at and laugh at. What I see all religion is a desperate human attempt to put a face on something that's faceless, a name on something that's nameless. And that's pretty much that's not really disputed in religion itself. In other words, you know, the Jehovah's Witnesses believe in Yahweh as their God. And the funny thing about this is you're not even supposed to say that word. It's the unnameable, the nameless. And it's actually YHWH. And it was their religion that threw in the vowels. So in other words, the word itself is meaningless. So Yehovah, or Jehovah, is what it was changed to from YH. Basically, they're 4 letters, Hebrew letters. Yod, He, Vav, He. And it's very simple, four letters that represent God. And the vowels were added later. People are so hung up on the name. There's other religions talking about the 72 names of God. And I think that the whole point that we can take away from this is you can call God whatever you want. Why does my God have to be any less valuable than yours just because you read a book for yours? And that's always fascinated me. When people say that, you know, Yahweh, I say, well, that's not a real name. That doesn't even exist. And when people say, well, have you taken Jesus in your heart? It's hard for me to explain to them that the name Jesus did not exist at the time when Jesus lived. It amazes me how many people don't know this. So I say, well, what was Jesus' real name? You know? Well, it's Jesus. Well, you're just putting a name that, you know, modern humans have created. And I know I'm getting kind of off topic here, but it's the main points that really kind of, why can't we just accept that we believe what we believe? And why can't we just enjoy our lives without impressing what we believe on everyone else? It's because we want to feel comfortable in what we think we know. And we don't know shit. So, I guess a lot of people will hear this and say, well, you just haven't found God yet. You haven't found God. I say, that's okay. I haven't found your God. I found my God. And it lives right here and right there. It all really is one. God is not a he or a she to me. There's no white beards or long flowing hair or the white man Jesus with fucking blonde hair. It's pathetic. You know, Jesus was black, if anything, okay? And if Christians can't admit that, then, you know, that's to their failure. But it was the Middle East, don't forget. So anyhow, it just amazes me that in today's world, with all the information at our fingertips, we're not willing to dissect what we think we know. And so this leaves religion open to criticism in every way, shape, and form. Because if they're proselytizing the absolute truth, and there's people telling me that I'm going to burn for eternity in hell for what I don't believe, then all I can give them is a big middle finger in my own opinion, you know? So, if it makes you comfortable, so be it. Just don't push it on me. And if you show up at my door, you better be ready. Talk to y'all later.